Cool. All right. Thank you, squad, for coming to All Fours by Miranda July, the May, June, I don't know, May or June book club pick for Sundays. I was really excited for this book. It did not disappoint me. I'm excited to get into our first impressions, but I'm going to start off reading the jacket blurb just to get ourselves resituated into how this book was marketed, I guess, and see if we felt that to be true. So, a semi-famous artist announces her plan to drive cross-country from Los Angeles to New York City 30 minutes after leaving her husband and child at home. She spontaneously exits the freeway, checks into a nondescript hotel, and immerses herself in an entirely different journey. Miranda July's second novel confirms the brilliance of her unique approach to fiction, with July's wry voice, perfect comic timing, unabashed curiosity about human intimacy, and palpable delight in pushing boundaries. All Fours tells a story of one woman's quest for a new kind of freedom. Part absurd entertainment, part tender reinvention of the sexual, romantic, and domestic life of a 45-year-old female artist. All Fours transcends expectations while excavating our beliefs about life lived as a woman. Once again, July hijacks the familiar and turns it into something new and thrilling, profoundly alive. Gorgeous. I also think it's so weird a George Saunders blurb is like the jacket blurb. I'm like, what? That just seems demographically like completely in opposition to who Miranda July is, but I digress. I would love us to start out by first impressions of the book. How was our reading experience? Do we like Miranda July as an artist? Are we familiar with her previous work, whether it be books or movies? I'm going to call on Jess to start us off because why not?
Okay. I've never read or seen anything by Miranda July before. This was like my introduction to this author, and I actually just finished this like maybe 10 minutes before I got on here. I was like, I have to finish this. And I will say I was a little disappointed with the ending. I felt like I wanted something a little bit more concrete, more like definitive on her journey. But getting there was very entertaining. I really enjoyed it.
Awesome.
Yeah, I loved it too. There were parts where it felt like it dragged a little bit for me, but I think I just got so immersed in the beginning and it felt really anxiety inducing that when it wore off a little bit, I was like, okay, where is this going? But I loved it. This was my first Miranda July as well. I downloaded No One Belongs Here More Than You and read the first essay and didn't know what to make of it. I'm still like, processing it. But I love Miranda's writing. It felt like, I don't know a lot about astrology, but it felt like an air sign to me. Like I looked up, I guess Miranda's an Aquarius and I'm a Gemini. So it just felt like being like in the mind of someone kind of like me. And I loved that experience.
I didn't know she was an Aquarius. That tracks. What about you, Catherine?
Oh, I loved it. So this, I had seen The Future years ago, like I guess more probably than 10 years ago, but I never really written or read anything she'd written. And she's so funny, like so funny. And it sort of reminded me of I Love Dick, which I actually have not read the book. So I am referencing the TV show right now, but I loved it.
There's a TV show?
Yes, it was like an Amazon Prime show probably like 10 years ago too. Whoa. And so it's been on like my TBR forever because I loved the show so much. But it sort of had that quality of like an artist, an obsession. And yeah, it was so good. I loved it.
Love it. Kyle.
This is not my introduction to Miranda July. Back in like middle school, like in 2000, I remember downloading like weird spoken word things that she did, specifically one called Lena Beamish. And it's the weirdest thing. You can look it up on YouTube. Yeah, and then she had a website where she would like kind of give people tasks like braid someone's hair. So I'll like braid my friend's hair, take a picture, make your parents kiss, like I get my grandparents to kiss. It's just like fun, neat stuff. So yeah, I've seen the movies that she's done. I can't even remember the name of the first one, but
You, me, and everyone we know.
yeah, Yumi and everyone we know, like super insane stuff. The kid would like go to the library and chat with adults, and it just it's a weird like honesty and level of uncomfort like that I like a lot. So I was stoked for this book, and I read it twice, and I'm giving it to everyone I know. I liked it a lot.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Kyle, I'm a Miranda July stan. She had like this public art exhibition in Portland that was ongoing. She like lived in Portland for a long time, and it's like, I don't know, kind of a twee girl like icon. And so that really resonated with me as a teenager. And I love her movies. I think I still prefer her movies over her books, but I've still like read everything that she's written, and big stan. So I was really excited for this, and I loved it too. I saw this Goodreads review, and it's like, I feel like Miranda July allows me to be human, and I feel like that's exactly how I feel too. It's just a lot of uncovering of ugly human behavior that I really resonate with, even if I don't like, it's not always one-to-one, obviously, with the things she's doing, but I'm like, oh, like, thank you for uncovering the disgusting little gremlin in my brain. Like, that's exactly what we need more of. I feel like as a book, I think there's like maybe 100 pages at the end that didn't need to be here. Like, I think a tightening could have worked for me, but also like that's not how she works. Like, she is a sprawler, and just like I like that it had a leaky effect and kind of dissipated and got vaporized almost. And as much as like my closed narrative loving brain wanted like some kind of wrapping up, that's not life, and that's like also definitely not who she is as an author. So I'm fighting against that in my critique of any book I may have. And I would say this book felt like really tender and auto-fictional and autobiographical. Obviously, I don't like, she's married to the director Mike Mills, and she's pulling a lot from her life is basically what I'm saying, which is I think a theme of Sunny's book club books is we read a lot of autofiction. And this is no, this is no different, but it was like a lot of witnessing, you know what I mean, in real time, which is like a gift, but also gross at the same time. I'm like, oh girl, like let's work it out. Like, she might be 5 years removed from what she was actually processing in this book, but it did feel a little like urgent, and like, like a bruise, like you're pressing on a bruise and it's like deepening or something, is what I would say reading this felt like, if any of that makes sense. So yay, I'm glad we all liked it, because this is like a very horned up fucking weirdo book, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like a scary book to pick for a book club. But yeah, I'm glad that we all had a good time with it. So the book itself is structured into parts, which I love for structuring book club, because it makes it easier to flow the conversation that way. But I want us to start on part one, as you can imagine. And part one, I feel like, was really her setting the scene for her domestic relationship and kind of giving us insight into her marriage and what her experience to motherhood and like some early trauma attachments to like how she came into motherhood were. And then also obviously setting up this like faux road trip narrative and getting her to, what is it, the Excelsior motel, and forming this space, right? Just as a reminder. So I think I'd love to talk about that space and like what that motel and small California town allowed her to do. Like, what do you guys think she needed out of the creation of not only like her boutique motel room in the middle of nowhere, but also that like bland nothing town that she was searching for?
Yeah, I was really hung up in the beginning on some of the rules that she had in her mind that maybe like weren't even apparent to other people in her life. Like, oh, Harris and I will have sex once a week. If we don't, then there's like our relationship is deteriorating, and he like he's keeping track and all these things about how we'll have a breakthrough. And I I felt like someone, I don't know, this is maybe me putting a personal twist on it, but I felt it as like someone who's not living the right kind of life for them and doesn't know how to cope with that other than to escape or kind of be in this like flight or freeze state. Because I have like, it made me think of this time where I was supposed to go camping with my friends and I was going to stop at my parents' house on the way there. And then I stopped at my parents' house and no one was home and I just could not get myself to go on the camping trip. I was just like talking myself out of it. And I think I just needed this time to like be in my own space with no expectations and yeah, be free from being perceived and yeah, and like a lot of the expectations I just put on myself. And so it felt like this space where she was free from that.
Yeah, I also like the like black hole of freedom it allowed her. And I guess what's interesting about how she sets up her and Harris's marriage is she's obviously not like a trad wife traditional mother in any sense. Like they're raising a non-binary kid, like they're two artists in this bohemian, you know, relationship in a major city who are making work out of making art for a living. They obviously are like being transgressive in multiple ways, but I like that it just like shone a light, but it did a lot of showing, not telling, I guess, of like how gender roles and like power dynamics are so insidious that they're like in our subconscious, even if we're like doing everything externally to try to like fight against it. It's like you still have a voice in the back of your head of like, this is what being a wife and a mother means. And she couldn't escape that like in her day to day. So she had to like physically remove herself from that situation to, I guess, get space from how claustrophobic early motherhood can be. Are any of us mothers? No, right? No. Yeah. What did you guys think of mothering in this book and her relationship with her kid and I guess the exploration of the trauma, like the body trauma in here? Any thoughts about that?
I mean, I'll go again. I like coming from the air sign perspective, it felt like she was kind of removed from it and hadn't really felt the feelings, maybe. And yeah, like what you mentioned, I mean, if it's autofiction, like it could be Miranda processing things at a later date, but it also felt like someone, yeah, just continuing to relive the trauma because it hadn't been fully processed. So I thought of it in that way, but I loved her relationship with Sam. Some of those conversations were my favorite in the book and made me laugh out loud. So and how Sam was so present too, in contrast to her.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I think it was like a good grounding motif to this like existential chaos she's in her head, and then like a good reminder of like even when she leaves the hotel and gets back into her life, there's like that snap of like, oh shit, like I'm actually in my body and like people are dependent on me. So I liked it as that, and also just I don't know. It makes you just like admire mothers, you know what I mean? Obviously, we're supposed to admire mothers, but I'm like, God, what a bodily, just like complete experience that people have all the time. And it's so normal and so major, you know? Um, yeah. Okay, back to the hotel. We're back in the hotel. We're in our weird art project, Lux Suite, which I just love. Like, I just love visualizing this happening. I wish this happened in real life. I wish that was a movie. Like, I wish this whole first chapter was a movie, and I can just see like the rundown motel and her working with like the weird wife who wants to be an interior designer in this like podunk town, and just I guess this exploration of like taste and class and the high low of it all. so setting us back in the hotel, we also are introduced to Davy, who is a main character throughout this book. And yeah, I'd love to open it up about our interpretation of Davy. I think again, like what he allowed the main character to do or to access within herself, and kind of how he was used within the book. Any reactions to him as a character?
Yeah, I'm a little fresh on Davy because I just finished and I'm just like, oh my God, he was so embarrassing.
The
I
dancing?
was, when he danced in front of her, I was like, what is happening? I got so much secondhand embarrassment. I'm like, this is not real. This didn't actually happen. But
That makes me feel better.
but it felt real. And I was like, this is not happening to her right now. Like he's literally like dancing in front of her and just like, and it's, I think what makes it worse is that it's like hip hop dancing. And I was like thinking of that video of that woman where she's like, this is what makes it hip hop. And like,
Yeah.
that's what I imagined happening. But I know like the intention was to actually make him like a serious like artist in his dancing, you know, whatever. And like this was his, you know, occupation that he was trying to make serious. But I couldn't take it seriously. Yeah. I loved Davy. I thought he was a little full of himself, but like in some sense, you know, like a little righteous because, you know, he wouldn't have sex with her. But at the same time, I was like, well, good for you for having self-restraint. But I was mostly just embarrassed by him a lot of the time.
By his dancing.
But just, it really was the dancing scene. After that, I couldn't get it out of my head. I was like, oh my God. But okay, those were my thoughts.
Bringing the strobe light.
Yeah, I love him setting the scene, but I think like that earnestness.
Yes.
And I can't find it. There was a quote in here, and it was like, "This is what fame allowed me, disciples. It neutered me." Like I think that's what the quote was, her inner monologue, and just, I guess to answer my own question, like that is what he stood for, was like someone to admire her as she's kind of cresting this new wave of aging, right? Because that's the big major theme of this book, is your sexuality and vitality and relevance in society as women age. I mean, we don't need to talk about that too much, but obviously it just continues to be a downward spike, you know, in theory, right? So she's like feeling that in her body and her mind, and like they're competing with each other. And I love that I don't know, what do we think about him not like meeting that urge of going all the way with her and like actually physically having sex? What did we think about like what that meant for both
That's
character
realistic.
arcs?
That's real.
Yeah.
That's real. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's like a morality blanket over himself. He's like, I'm married. You know what I mean? So like,
Yeah.
so we're gonna like, supposedly intercourse is the most intimate thing you can do with another person, but he's like tricking himself by saying that because they have these like completely insane, graphic, like intimate scenes with each other that are just so close to sex, but not that, or completely removed from sex, and about like removing someone's tampon for them. And I think that dissonance of him like not engaging with her all the way just shined a light, I guess, on what intimacy really is and what it means to be close to someone.
Well, he was such a foil compared to Harris too, because Harris was sort of like that artist professional that is like serious and organized and like sort of perfect. And he comes in sort of, he reminded me of so many like guys that I grew up with, because I grew up in a small town, and you have these guys that are like kind of hot, kind of goofy, but don't realize they're goofy. So it kind of gives you the ick, and would probably hook up with a middle-aged woman, which more power to you. But yeah, it was because that is sort of inverting that small town sort of I feel like in a lot of small towns, like you end up like sort of having like everything has a normal baseline. You know, people talk because there's so much familiarity, so you stick to the norm. And when you don't, you're like the housekeeper at the hotel whose name I don't remember, where Claire is like kind of shitty to her because she cheated on her uncle or whatever. And so he's sort of still sticking to that baseline, but obviously he is not completely neutered in his attraction to women that are sort of considered outside that norm at that point, age-wise.
Yeah, I love this quote from, this is what is his name? Davy speaking. You love me, but you wouldn't leave your husband for me. I stared at him agog. Was he insane? Just switch horses? And Sam would be his, what, stepchild? Harris was an adult, my partner. I didn't respond. It was like a ghost asking you to leave your husband for them. There's no kind of way to say, but you're see-through. You got the message anyway. So he's just like not even a mirror for her desire, but like a transference object, like a vessel for her to just kind of pour like desirability politics into and kind of see like what shaked out and what she could control in a way. And I don't think in like a gross toxic way, just in a subconscious way of like her exploring what it meant to age and still be a sexual being and like have some semblance of, I guess, artistic power or like
and frustration too, because
yeah.
had that artistic frustration too, but obviously didn't have like sort of the, you know, history of success that she did.
Cool.
Yeah, this book really made me think of Melissa Broder, like a few of her books. Yeah, I mean the motel, like the road trip, the motel. And then even with Davy, like just getting caught up in the daydream imagination, like what someone could be, and then realizing, oh, like this person was more about me than about them, like and my needs in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I read 3 Broder books after this just because I wanted more of the same. And it was the first that I read that author, and I get it, it's great.
Yep,
Yeah.
I need more of this too.
Yeah. It's just that level of honesty. It just makes you feel kind of high, like, and a whole book of it, it's like, oh wow, like this is insane. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard someone compare the Pisces to Fleabag, like the narrative. And yeah, I love that where it's like you want to look away, but it's so real and raw and it just a place that I think a lot of us have been, but it's just that vulnerability that maybe you don't see in a lot of books.
Yeah. Especially for women, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that leads us nicely to part 2, where she snapped back into her life. Her desire for Davy is dissipating, or still also kind of subconsciously controlling every action she does because she wants his attention desperately. So she starts going to the gym. She's trying to get swole. She, I guess, what else happens in this? They get a dog, Smokey the dog. And then I think also here is like the big exploration of perimenopause. So like the actual scientific bodily attachment to what she is going through and like what her generation of friends are going through. And then also at the end, and I definitely want to talk about this, her final, I guess, consummation of desire with his babysitter, question mark. I forget what Audra was, or like her mom's sex therapist. What was that character?
She was the mom's friend.
The
She was
mom's
just-
friend.
Yeah, she was just the mom's friend.
Okay. I thought she was his babysitter, but
She's the one that she bought the comforter from.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, then
The
Davy
mom had a
dog sat for her or something.
Oh yeah. Davy was
Or
his
house sat or yeah.
dog sitter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pet sitter.
The mom had a whole different idea of what was going on, or a different story. Yeah.
Right.
Mhm. So perimenopause. Damn, didn't know about that. You know what I mean? Isn't it just like so shocking how many new things there are to deal with, like in your body? I don't have anything eloquent about that to say. I'm just like, what the fuck? Like,
And they don't teach you anything, but they're like, you need to know trigonometry.
no.
Well,
Uh,
and
Like-
this is part 3, but the messages from her friends about the like positives around menopause, I've never heard that. That was so amazing.
Yeah. A small gleam of hope and, you know,
Yeah.
never ending journey to know your body. Um, yeah, so I guess the main thing I want to talk about in chapter 2, she's out of the hotel, but again, trying to find her way back to some connection to Davy. So she goes back to the town where she runs into Audra. What do we think about Audra, her relationship to the main character, and I guess their scene together? How did it leave you feeling?
Audra was an old pro.
She's like a spiritual guide or something.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
she's a weird shaman of menopause and middle age.
Well, it's so funny because like you sort of think of this artist main character as this sort of like super liberal, like self realized in a lot of ways, but obviously she's sort of having her own journey. But it's this woman that has a bed in her living room in this small town that really is the most realized out of all the characters.
Yeah. I think it also sets up like something that happens in the next scene, which is like role play and the function of role play in this book and its ability for like the truth to be told.
Mhm.
Because they're are they role playing and she is Davy, or they're role playing as what her and Davy's relationship was, her being Audra.
Audra
Yeah, it was like
was recounting what her
Yeah.
sexual experience was like with Davy as
Yeah, when she was younger. Yeah.
yeah, as when she was younger as oh my God, I'm blanking on her name. What is her name? Do you ever have her name?
I don't think she's named
No.
ever.
She's not named, right? Okay. I'm like, why am I literally just finished it. How do I not remember her name? Yeah, as she was like, you know, fondling herself during these recounts of what had happened. And then it like kind of just like merged into one whole experience at the end
Yeah.
for both of them.
I like this line on page 210. Was this the secret to everything? This bodily freedom? And I think she learns no in further chapters, like with her new girlfriend, but there is like a lesson in her starting to unlock about, I feel like, her queerness and like affirming her queerness and being able to like not be in a monogamous relationship with a heterosexual man and like what that allows her to access in herself, that I really liked and was interesting. And like seemed important for her as someone who had such struggles, or I guess rigidity, in her gender role and power dynamic in her like marriage earlier, that was obviously like stifling and freaking her out internally, right? So it did seem like it obviously freed a lot of stuff up there, even if it was a charade, you know, half the time, like a performance. It still unlocks something true, which I think is so Miranda July again. Part 3. Okay, what happened in part 3? So I feel like part 3 is back in the domestic a lot, and we're again kind of role playing to allow for truth with her having those sexual moments with Harris and trying to, I don't know, talk about what they want without having to be themselves in that moment, which I just loved. It was so weird. And I don't think it made it any less like true. You know what I mean? Like it just felt like the only way that they could access the changing of this thing that they've been doing together for 10 years at that time. So we're non-monogamous now. We're still married. We're still raising our kid together. But looking for new connections and kind of reimagining what a family looks like. How did this section leave you all feeling? Do we have any feelings about the new girlfriends? How they handled it talking to their kid?
For me personally, I think it was a little difficult for me to kind of understand, obviously, because I'm in a monogamous relationship. Like I've been married since I was 19. It's all I know. Like I know I got married really young. I'm
Like, damn.
yeah, I'm like the story is not about me. But I did get married really young, and so like it's all I know, and like I'm still with the same man, and he's the only man I've ever been with. And so for me, this was really like alien. I'm like, I don't understand this. And so it was hard for me to kind of sympathize and empathize with them and try to understand how they were trying to make their marriage work. So I struggled trying to, empathize with them and them trying to figure out what their family dynamic was going to be like. But it was interesting because, families like this, I'm assuming, do exist. And, we're none the wiser because optics wise, it looks like a normal quote unquote family, or like a family that you would typically see, walking around, or, that you would be in real life or something. So I thought that was kind of interesting because, again, it was like a dynamic of that's completely foreign to me.
Yeah, I think it might have been in part 2 after being with Audra where she has that scene where she's walking and maybe dancing while she's walking, and then like she just wants to be intimate with everyone. Like she even talks about her family, where it's like
Right. That's so weird.
yeah, it's like but yeah, I think she was just really herself maybe, or just like really intimate and like hadn't experienced that a lot. And so she's looking to maybe connect with more people and open up different parts of herself. So I kind of saw her exploring that in part 3, which I thought was really interesting because it is true. Like the more different types of people you connect with and interact with, the more parts of yourself you expose and learn about. So that was cool.
Right. I
Yeah.
also, sorry, I don't mean to monopolize this particular conversation, but I thought it was quick the way within Harris accepted what was
Mm,
happening as well, like as if he already knew.
Yeah.
mm,
Which
Because I think
like
he did. Like,
right.
in that scene on page 256, it's like, I said I could on my Wednesdays. And he's like, I figured. What do you mean? Just that you were doing more than working in that motel, which like is the nice subconscious thread of what long-term partnership does grant you, is like a knowing that like is unsaid. And I like that. I mean, that's like beautiful to me. And it's not like, oh, I've freaked out and ran over to the motel and I didn't want you to access this part of yourself. Like he obviously knows that some of her needs weren't getting met and like gave her space to figure that out without like fracturing and blowing up their whole like family.
Right.
Which I think is sick.
Well, yeah, also because the entire time she's like adamant about the fact that he doesn't understand her.
Mm-hmm.
He does. She just doesn't see it. And had she been, I don't know, maybe more open and communicative and trying to like express how she was feeling, which obviously is really hard, especially because, she has always felt like she was putting on a performance for him. But in reality, he already knew, like he knew her, but she didn't see that.
I will say I just read a couple weeks ago. It's the memoir. It's by Molly Roden Winter. It's the one that was like featured in the New York Times. It's this couple that has like an open relationship, and she wrote a memoir about it.
Oh yeah.
And I do recommend reading it. It wasn't like the best memoir I've ever read, but it was like really interesting because it basically goes through the entire process, and it starts, and this isn't giving anything away, with her being like attracted to a younger guy as well. And it wasn't quite the age difference of Davy and the character here, but there is so many logistical conversations that go on, and then like sort of these emotional check-ins and meetings. And I did feel like in some ways, and maybe this was just because they were different people, but I was like, oh, I like kind of expected a little more of that here, because it really is sort of, I was like, this is like a hobby at this point, like trying to set up some of these different stuff and make sure everybody's good, all of that. And I don't know that I saw them spending as much time in all fours doing that. But I thought it was you talking about the knowing. I got more out of all fours than for more with the knowing. Like Harris was like maybe a little bit more understanding, and she was like in a different place, so she could explain that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And then we meet Chris. Chris is the new girlfriend who's the assistant art handler of some famous woman artist who's even older than Miranda, named Elsa. And I don't really remember a lot about how they meet, but it seems like they immediately have like a sexual relationship that's kind of materialized kind of immediately. And I think it's just like a new, like, I feel like Miranda's like kind of down bad, obsessed with Chris, right? Okay. And part 3 ends with them. Wait, does it? Am I in part 4? Oh, wait. Yeah, part 3 ends with her and Chris breaking up. Or Chris kind of like rejecting her and having her get out of her house immediately. Which I don't know what was happening here. What do we think this stood for? What Miranda was doing with this kind of abrupt endingness of this one relationship that the main character formed?
Well, wasn't Chris a little upset that they had role played basically with the main character being Elsa, and that was like it was crossing a boundary Chris felt like was really upsetting. And then when when the main character, sorry, I just keep calling her the main character, when she sees Chris's friend at the dog park, and Chris's friend is like, oh, she forgives you, like as though she's the perpetrator, which I was like, damn, damn, these people are savage.
Only because she didn't know what she did. She was like,
It was absurd. It was just absurd.
right. She's like, what did I do? What do you mean she forgives me? That was funny. Yeah.
She moved on a little quick. Like she found someone else and she just moved on. I think there was a distance, if I recall, and she was like going to her city. Yeah.
Yeah. I think if anything, this shows like how the main character can quickly become obsessive over another person.
Yeah,
Like
or like the
desire for
fleetingness of desire. And she's just like
Mhm.
chasing the dragon of like loved and being known.
Exactly. She went psycho to like try to get Davy's attention. And then, oh my God, when she went back and like she found out that he wasn't living there anymore, I was like, oh my God, that's how jarring for that to happen to her. And then, you know, for her to quickly get over that and then become obsessed with this new person, I'm like, oh, she needs help. Like,
You asked earlier why she stayed at that hotel. It was Davy. Like she was into him. I love when she's like, "Oh, I just saw his stomach. Let me stop right there." But and then she goes on. And, oh, it was so funny. Yeah, she was very into this guy.
I did see the relationship with Chris a little bit as a parallel with her relationship with Harris. Just I think Chris like got over it without even discussing with the main character. It was just kind of like she got over it on her own, decided it was over, and then that was it. And I think it's a little bit like the main character, like stepping away, distancing herself without even like, yeah, having that conversation with Harris.
Mhm.
And then part 3 actually ends with her talking to the mysterious pop star throughout the book, Arcanda. Which I'm like, okay, like, I don't know. That was a little side quest that I don't know
Yeah.
what we were doing there. But I guess, I don't know, let's think critically about it. What was happening with Arcanda? Like in my mind, I guess it's like, oh sorry, who's about to
No.
speak?
No, go ahead.
Okay. It was like her still having commercial desires, as in commercial success desires, despite being like a niche indie artist who like has this kind of like fringe relevance and awareness. Like she still wanted that through her work. and like her, I guess, perseverance of forming this relationship with this person was like that happening subconsciously. But obviously that's not what happened in the room when her and Arcanda are talking. They're like having an emotional connection about the shared experience that they went through with their kid and the early sickness that they were going through. But I'm like, what? Like, Arcanda existed for me because the assistant was funny. Like that made her worth it because it got me to know the assistant, who I thought was like hilarious.
Well, it was so funny when she was like, "How's Smithy?" and Arcanda's just like, "Smith? Like TMZ? What?"
Right.
Yeah, I took it as face value. I figure she has been approached by somebody like this. I don't know why I was thinking Ariana Grande for some reason. In real life, yeah, I can see it happening. Like,
I know it did make me curious. I'm like, is it Beyonce? Is it Rihanna? Like who is this person?
When I was reading it, I thought Rihanna too.
I thought Rihanna as well.
I
Yeah.
was like,
yeah, someone older, someone having children. Yeah.
Yeah.
like it's got to be them. They're just popping it out.
I will say it was like nice to see her interact with Fame because we see her repeatedly talk about how like Fame
Yeah.
puts the position of a man, and she sort of has that relationship with Davy where she has like power in the relationship in a very different way than she has power in the relationship with Harris. And yeah, it was just very funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point. Part 4, very short. We're reconnecting with Davy. Davy is famous now? Question mark? Like, right? Davy is famous for dancing? Is that true?
I don't believe it. Don't.
Okay, and when I thought I should have gone back and read it, I thought she mentioned something about seeing an advertisement of them dressed as tigers or with
Yes.
tigers.
Yes.
And then I was like, but they
It's
weren't dressed as
animated.
tigers. Oh, it was animated. Okay.
But I mean, that was their ad. It was like 2 animated tigers. And I'm like, what?
I figured he
on
made it to
America's
Broadway.
Got Talent. What'd you say, Kyle?
I feel like he made it to Broadway,
Okay.
Who
like the
knows?
Lion King or something.
The Lion
The Lion
He's up
King.
there. He's on stage dancing. Yeah.
Okay.
To me, it was America's Got Talent. Like he was on a reality talent show that took off, and now he has like a Vegas show. But she's not dragging him that hard. Like I think he did have like it was artistic in some way.
The thing is, I don't think it was meant to be in like to berate or to drag. I think it was
No.
like seriously trying to like characterize this character as like a serious dancer, and I just didn't buy it. I'm like, I don't buy it.
Oh, I loved it. What did she say? She's like, everyone loved him, but like the way I loved him, or like,
Yeah.
that was cool. Yeah, I
Yeah.
bought it.
Well, okay.
Yeah, she says he was supposed to be working at a Sacramento Hertz, lost in memory and yearning. So I do love that like Davy had agency and like was able to ascend
Right.
to
Mhm.
something without her like control or direct influence over his life. And I guess that was like a good reminder of her.
Yeah, 'cause she did get a little delulu in the beginning where she was like still anticipating her meeting with Arcanda, and she was like, well, if it's about a project, maybe it's a music video, and she
Yeah.
needs me to like
Mhm.
hire dancers, and I can
Mhm.
hire Davy, and we'll be, live happily ever after. And I'm like, whoa, girl, like, calm down. Like this movie got rescheduled for like a year. Like, but maybe like in that way I can see, them like you said, giving Davy more agency as a character, and like he's not just this like passing person in her life. He was like someone with substance that, she got to meet and reconnect with later on when she was more stable in who she is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
On the last page, it says he was still rising, and now the idea of having him was perverse. So I don't know. I guess that flip of power again, the power dynamic shifting on her, and like, I don't know. I love gratitude came like a punch in the gut, and because it's always such a relief not to be an asshole after all, tears stream down my cheeks.
Well, she does go back and forth with the binary of good and bad throughout the book
Yeah.
too, which is so funny because, and I think this is true of probably so many parents, even though I'm not a parent, like she doesn't project the binaries onto Sam in a very obvious way, but yet still does that to herself, which I think is so much of parenting. But
Yeah.
Absolutely.
also, I love his friend Jordy. Oh, sorry.
That's exactly what I was supposed to say. I was like, that leads us to the end, but we didn't talk about Jordy, who
Jordy's the best.
oh my God, what a gift to have a friend who's just like, yeah, okay, like you're being the fucking weirdest person alive right now. Cool. Like that sounds
I
sick.
accept you.
Yeah.
I was worried Jordy was gonna be like, I need
Snap.
space.
Yeah.
Yeah, snap. It is hard to have a friend who is maybe wants to just complain or talk about the same things over and over again without anything changing. But it seems like they had a like healthy relationship, and hopefully Jordy got to share her feelings too.
Yeah, totally.
Well, and Jordy was nice about cueing, like, oh, you've already told me that when it happened, but still was like non-judgmental and supportive. I was like, everybody needs to be like Jordy. Like, I strive
Yeah.
to be like Jordy. I'm
Yeah.
not there yet.
She was down. She was down. Cool. Anything else we didn't talk about that you guys want to chat about?
I was just thinking, oh, go ahead.
No, go.
Okay. I want to see an exhibit or something with some of the like physical pieces, like the inanimate objects from the story, like the big spoon and the chair that had "Call Me" spray painted on it, and like
That would be fun.
the quilt
Yeah.
she bought, or maybe just the whole hotel room. Like I loved the use of inanimate objects in this story.
Yeah.
The tile.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, she has an art book that I own actually, and it's like a giant monograph collection of like all of her work. And they need to redo it now that this exists. It has like fanzines in it and like all of her like weird participatory like group art projects, like Kyle was talking about earlier. It's like all bound into a book. It's really interesting. You guys should get it if that interests you and you like Miranda and want to dive deeper into her backlog.
So creative.
She a freak.
Did anybody do like any reading of her talking about this book? Because I have not, because I went in blind and then I finished like just like 10 minutes before. So I was curious if she was like, oh, this is auto fiction, or don't read it this way, or read it this way, or anything she said about it.
She's like, yeah, I'm pulling from my life. I didn't read a lot of interviews. I think there's some good ones out there, but I didn't read a lot of them before this.
I've just been like holding on to them because I kind of wanted to go in blind.
Yeah, totally.
I'm not gonna lie, I was a little scared to start this one because in the Discord, I forgot somebody said something how crazy it was and like depraved and like I don't know. And I was like, oh, I normally don't like books like that. Like I'm kind of prudish, so I'm like, I don't know if I'm like this, but it was I really liked it. I felt like everything had a purpose.
Yeah.
Like I feel like every scene had a purpose, so it wasn't just thrown in to like be smutty or to, you know, for wow factor. It like tied into like the other bigger themes and like her as a character and like the whole story itself. So I enjoyed it.
Yeah, even all the characters, they all came back around. Like they're all related, and yeah, it was all there for a reason, like you said.
Awesome. Well, thanks for your time, guys. We're reading Brat by Gabriel Smith. Spoiler alert, I hated it. And I like need you guys to read it because my friend Jalen read it and he loves it. It's one of his favorite books of the year. And I'm like, what am I missing? Because I am usually so aligned with him. So I need more people to read it and see what's
I love a good hate read.
You hated the whole thing?
The best discussions.
Yeah, I read the whole thing. I have to read the whole thing for my own book club, but
well, I meant like you hated all of it.
Yeah.
Fun.
Yeah, very fun. And then we're reading The Coin, which I'm really excited about. It's about like someone who's reselling fake Birkin bags. So it'll be a romp. It's another like woman on the verge, unhinged. She's losing her mind.
My favorite.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna stop recording now. Hold on.